Good to be with you again. Do you like to talk back to the radio or TV when you hear commercials? I love it. And we always win the argument, don't we? Recently, I've heard a number of times a guy advertising something, helping veterans, a very noble project. But at one point, he always says, in these days, historic days, kindness has become a virtue. And I always think, when wasn't kindness a virtue? Even in the Old Testament, in the book of Proverbs, we hear one of the sayings handed down among the Jews: whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life and honor. And in another place in chapter 31, it says, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. And in the book of Sirach, we find kindness is like a garden of blessings. Yes, kindness has always been a virtue. I suppose, as you think of it, people are often very nice to one another, but niceness doesn't really establish a relationship. But when you go beyond that being nice, to doing something that maybe demands something from you or costs you something in terms of time and effort, that's coming from love, and that establishes a certain bond, a certain relationship with that person. It strikes me how often our TV news, after all the horrible things that have happened today throughout the world, they love to end with some story that's positive, that's about the kindness that someone showed to someone else. Almost as if to say, in spite of all the evil and the wickedness that human beings are capable of, yes, we are still capable of putting love into action and kindness. Yes, kindness is one of the ways in which we show the presence of Christ in our lives. We remember well how the early peoples of the world learned to respect Christians and said over and over again, look at these Christians. Look how they love one another. They knew that went against the grain. We're so inclined as human beings to be selfish, to think of number one, always ourselves, and to actually put ourselves out a bit and reach out to someone else. That demands some love. Perhaps you've noticed this year in our Sunday celebrations of the liturgy, after the readings from the Acts of the Apostles, this year we're having a reading from the first letter of John. Some years at this time we would hear the first letter of Peter or the book of Revelation. The book of John, the first letter that he wrote, is very popular with the church. We use it every year in the days after Christmas, and here we're using it too in the Easter season, as we celebrate the new life of Christ, his presence among us, how he changes our lives with his presence and the Spirit that is within us. And yes, 1 John always challenges us to remember it isn't enough to say we love God. It isn't enough to say creeds and prayers. We need to show a love for God and a love for one another. And that so often takes the form of some act of kindness when we go beyond ourselves to reach out to someone in need. They may actually be surprised by it, shocked. Yes, so often it does even establish a relationship with that person. Yes, we are called to make the presence of Christ real in our lives. And one of the ways we do it is by translating a love of God and the love that we've received through the outpouring of the Spirit in the new life of Christ by showing kindness to one another. It can overcome so many evils. It can bring so much joy to people. And especially, I guess, this year, when so many people have felt isolated, alone, craving for some degree of normality. It really helps when someone experiences the kindness of someone who thought enough to reach out to them and help them in a moment of need. Yes, try to show the love of Christ in those little acts of kindness and consideration. We help to build up the body of Christ. We help to show people Jesus Christ is alive in us, alive in our hearts, and our love for him moves us to love one another. God bless you and keep you safe.